Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeff Malanoff, and with me once again is Marc Souza. We're going to be talking about the Monday Night Football game between the Chiefs and the Broncos and Patrick Mahomes and how well he's been playing. We're also going to be talking about the MLB Postseason and how that has been formatted and how that's going to be settled in our predictions for the next couple of weeks heading into the postseason for the October. And then also we're going to be talking about whatever else that comes to our minds in the final segment. But first, let's get right into the Kansas City versus Denver. Kansas City won 27-23. Patrick Mahomes had another pretty stellar day. 28 of 45 passing, 304 yards, and a touchdown. A lot of people are impressed by his left-handed pass that got to the first down of that conversion. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, everybody's talking about Mahomes this morning, rightfully so. The kid had a really good game last night. And not only the left-handed pass, that was the most notable play that he made, but he just made play after play. I think he passed for 189 yards outside of the pocket, which was just ridiculous. And, the Broncos' defense might not be as stout as it has been in years past, but Von Miller and Bradley Chubb are definitely two guys that you have to take account for, and it just looked like he was playing at a different speed last night.
Mm-hmm. Also, I think one of the statistics that's important is that Kansas City Chiefs had 10 penalties that game for 93 total yards, and yet they still won. Do you think without these penalties, they could have had the larger lead in this game?
Yeah, I was actually very impressed with Kansas City because I don't believe they played their A game, but they still found a way to win a tough game on the road in a game where, they had Sammy Watkins got hobbled early in that game. The connection with Kelsey and Mahomes wasn't there in the first half. It took them a while to get into the game, but they did, face adversity, and they got past and they got a win in a game where they didn't have their A game. So very impressive. Like you mentioned, the penalties were a big factor in that game. I know it definitely made it tougher for them, but hey, they stuck with it, and ultimately Mahomes led them on that game-winning drive.
Definitely, and Kareem Hunt also had a very good game. 19 rushing attempts, 121 yards, and a touchdown, although his longest run of the game was a 45-yard run. He did pretty well in this game, and including with Mahomes, this offense looks to be almost unstoppable.
I would agree with that. He also had 54 yards receiving. We saw, like I mentioned before, Kelsey and Mahomes, they weren't connecting in the first half. No catches for Kelsey. But then he ends up 7 for 78 with a touchdown, of course. And, this offense is rolling. Sammy Watkins gets hurt, but it's almost like they didn't miss a beat. Tyreek Hill had a little bit more targets heading his way, and the Chiefs definitely found a way to win.
Tyreek Hill had more targets thrown to him than Kelsey did. He had 13 and Kelsey had 12. But everyone else had like 3 and 4 and 2. Like, not a lot of people else got the ball. Conley did get 6 targets, but the main targets were definitely Kelsey and Hill, and rightfully so. But I definitely think that the Broncos did hold their own. Case Keenum did have a pretty okay game. He did throw 21 of 33 with 245. He did have a pick and no touchdowns. but his running game had 2 touchdowns, but neither the Lindsey or Freeman had 100 yards rushing. So they were basically red zone guys when it came down to it. But the Broncos really held their own, but obviously couldn't get the job done. I don't see them competing for a playoff spot still.
For Denver, yeah, it'll be tough. Although I will say them being in the AFC gives them kind of an easier path than say that if they were in the NFC. Because if you look at the NFC right now, there's going to be a couple teams that are not going to make the playoffs that are pretty good teams. So a team like Denver, I could see them getting it together, getting it rolling in the second part of the season. I mean, we're not even at the halfway point yet, but regardless, I think they're a team that can get hot. The last night, I think they were impressive. I just think they were overmatched.
Absolutely. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is probably the hottest quarterback in football at the moment, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, he has as much of an argument as anyone, especially with the Fitzmagic being gone in Tampa Bay. It's Patrick Mahomes who has just been lighting the NFL on fire through 4 weeks.
Yeah, he didn't have a multiple touchdown game, but he still threw for over 300 yards and averaged 6 yards a pass. And he... his rating was pretty stellar, all things considered. And going through the whole list of he threw multiple targets to multiple guys. Obviously, he threw more to Hill and Kelsey, but he didn't leave anybody really out when it came to the wide receivers.
Yeah, and a lot of his game, I believe, was you can't really see it from the stats. He was converting a lot of third downs and things like that, where it seemed like, okay, the Chiefs offense has finally stopped. The Broncos got to stop. They're going to get off the field, and then Mahomes would make a play to extend a drive. I remember he threw across his body, I think, to Tyreek Hill in the middle of the field, which is kind of one of those uh-oh type plays, but it worked out. He threw a pass left-handed for a first down. I mean, I don't know. The stats may not say that he put up a game like Jared Goff did the other night, but that was a pretty amazing effort from a young quarterback.
Yeah, and also Patrick Mahomes did do a game-winning drive with under 2 minutes left to beat the Broncos. But the game really should have been that close at the end, but he still managed to get a game-winning drive into his career. For his first one, I believe this is the first game-winning drive of his career.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
This is his first year as a starter, correct? Because Alex Smith was the starter last year, and now he's with Washington.
Right. He had that one start in Week 17 last year, but I don't believe there was a comeback win there. So,
yeah, I didn't see anything about that, but This was a true test for him, just for a under 2 minute drive to win the game, and he showed that he could be the real deal, but I'm still kind of hesitant on jumping on the bandwagon because there's been so many instances where a rookie or a young quarterback does so well early in the season, and by next season he's almost a problem for the offense rather than a weapon.
Right. I mean, with a young quarterback, especially one that has immediate success right away in the NFL, you always have to wonder, okay, is this a fluke? Is this going to last? With Mahomes, I'm pretty confident that it will last because he is a very athletic, but he uses his athleticism to stay in the pocket or to get out of the pocket but still throw. Whereas some quarterbacks, they might, just tuck it and run and just kind of put their head down. I like the vision that he has. He seems to make a lot of great decisions out there and sees the field very well. So we will see. And you know what? We'll see right away because next week, Kansas City is hosting Jacksonville.
That's probably the biggest test of the year for them so far.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really fun game. We got a Jaguars team coming in. I mean, obviously we know about their defense. It's going to be a real first test for Mahomes. We don't know if Watkins, what his injury status will be, but I mean, you have to expect they'll have Hill, Kelsey, Kareem Hunt at minimum. So
yeah,
if they add Watkins in there, that's just and a little extra cherry on top.
Well, Watkins is still questionable for his injury, correct?
Yes.
What was his injury again?
I believe it was a hamstring. He went to the locker room and did not return to the game.
So it's maybe not a pulled hamstring, obviously, but maybe it's something of that matter. He'll probably be back next week, though. It didn't sound like it was serious. He walked off the field, so I believe he walked off the field, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
he walked off the field. I was thinking, like, he did walk off the field.
He walked into the training room.
Would you call him a draft bust, going just about Sammy Watkins? Just he was a first-round pick out of Clemson. He was supposed to be this huge wide receiver for Buffalo, and he kind of just went off the map after a while. I forgot he even went to the Kansas City at the beginning of the season.
I don't know if I would call him a bust. I mean, he's obviously had injuries that have derailed his career a little bit, but he is definitely a really good player, a dynamic player. Even in Buffalo, he was putting up, really, really good numbers with some shoddy quarterback play and not the greatest of offenses to be on. So he does have, it seems to be injury prone. I will say that.
Yeah. And I guess I can ask this question. Do you call a guy who's been injured a lot early in his career, like in a rookie year and a couple years after that, would you call him a draft bust, or would you just call him unlucky with the injury bug?
Yeah, it is one of those things, right? It's like, is he a bust, or is it just like,
bad
what do you
luck?
call that? Because it's not poor play. Like we know Sammy Watkins, when he plays, he's really good. I mean, he might not be a top 5 receiver in the NFL, but I still think
he can be a solid receiver, I think, what you're saying. And, like, I think he's still getting remembered for that one play in Buffalo where he was taunting on the way for a touchdown and got stopped.
Yeah.
I hope that's not his legacy. But
I think he'll have a long career.
It's going to be like, that's like his butt fumble at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. A little less memorable, but yes, it is a mark on his career.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's unfair, because he kind of, like, don't taunt before you get to the end zone. People that don't listen to that is like Golden Tate, but he, like, even with Golden Tate, like, he almost got tackled getting into the end zone taunting this week.
Yeah.
So I don't really know why you would anger guys that can hit you, personally. Like, you can taunt as soon as you get in the end zone. I'm okay with that. Taunting before you get in the end zone, you're going to get rocked. You're going to be aimed to get rocked in the next series.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. So let me ask you this. What do you think of the Chiefs season so far? Obviously, they're undefeated. They've beaten the Chargers.
This happened last year, didn't it? This is kind of
exactly. We're not in uncharted waters with Andy Reid. And
Andy Reid isn't known for a hot start in the regular season, and he just can't finish. Like, they always have a big slump, whether it's middle of the season or the end of the season, where it just all falls apart.
Okay. Yeah. No. Definitely.
So I'm not.
Right.
I'm not saying this is the best team in. This may be the hottest team in football right now. Granted, but I'm saying by end season, we'll see how the record is. Like, they could still, in my mind, can still go 9-7 with just how the history of this, the history of Andy Reid's career has showed.
Well, I think we're going to know pretty quick here in the next 3 to 4 weeks what kind of team this Chiefs team is. If they're just a hot team right now that kind of falls back to earth, or if they really are a stout Super Bowl contending team. Their next 2 matches are against Jacksonville and then New England.
And New England's back on the saddle after that dominant win against Miami, and Jacksonville is still an AFC contender, that's for sure.
They get Jacksonville at home, but they do travel to Foxborough to play Tom Brady on Sunday Night Football on the 14th. So in week 6 of the NFL season, they will have played Jacksonville and New England. At that time, we'll
they did go 6-0 last season and barely made the playoffs with the division win. If their division wasn't so bad, they might even have not won their division.
Yeah, absolutely. And, their schedule will get a little bit tougher. They do play the Bengals the week after they play New England, and then a rematch against the Broncos. And then they have a couple gimmies. They play the Browns at home, and they play the Cardinals.
I wouldn't call that a gimme. The Browns have talent. They put a competitive game through 4 quarters. They just don't know really how to finish.
Right. I mean, the Browns are definitely better than they were in the past, but that's a game.
I wouldn't put them as the worst team in the league. I'd put them up there as a very talented team, to be honest. They just have brown luck. Bad luck. They
Agreed.
brown it. I guess we came up with a verb yesterday. They brown it.
Exactly.
It's really unfair. It's really unfair to say that, but come on. I mean, with the history of this team, your verb is unlucky.
And then to kind of forecast, I'm looking here at the Chiefs' schedule. Week 12, the Rams.
That's depending how their momentum is going into that Week 12, it's going to be very interesting. But we're going to be taking a short break. We just talked about Monday Night Football. Next, we'll be talking about the MLB postseason for the next two segments. One about the games that happened yesterday, the games 163, and then in the next segment, we'll be talking about the matchups that have been officially announced, and we'll see you when we get back to you.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished talking about Monday Night Football and the Red Hot Chiefs. And now we're going into a beautiful month in October. That means baseball playoffs, MLB playoffs. We just had those game 163s, and our postseasons are finally set today. Our wildcard games, we have a wildcard game today, and we have a wildcard game tomorrow. Today, we have the Rockies and Cubs in Chicago. Who do you see with this game? Do you still see the Cubs taking, or do you think if the Rockies do have to travel all the way to Chicago after a rough game in LA, do you think that's going to play a factor in this?
Before we get into that, I'd like to just point out how our predictions yesterday, how right I was. Picking the Brewers and the Dodgers to take care of business.
I picked the Brewers also, but I picked the I picked the underdog Rockies. I picked the underdog in that situation just because I felt the Rockies got there, and I thought they could take the division. But they hung on for the whole season. But I would definitely put you did get it right. Doesn't mean you're always going to get it right.
I think I got the Monday Night Football game right, too. Pretty close.
Yeah. Well, once you get it wrong, it's going to come back to bite you. Just watch.
All right. So with that being said, I'll let you take the first shot here with the Rockies and
I did say the Rockies had a chance to go to the World Series, but I said that with the thought of them winning the division, not going to Chicago right after LA.
Fair enough.
That's going to be playing a huge factor in this. Going from a West Coast game to an East Coast game back to back against the Cubs, who are pretty darn good themselves.
Yeah.
But I definitely see this as a close game, though. I can still see this as a close matchup.
Yeah, the Rockies lose that game. They got to get on a plane and go all the way to Chicago. Quick turnaround for them. The game is at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific time tonight. So they do have about, probably 18 to 21 hours to land in Chicago, get prepared for this night. Freeland is pitching for the Rockies. John Lester for the Cubs. What do you think?
Lester for the Cubs might be more beneficial to the Rockies just because he's getting up there in age, and I think he's not in his prime. He's not the same that he used to be, like a shutdown pitcher. So maybe that's a good sign for the Rockies. Who knows? But yeah, and you've seen Lester play in the recent couple of years. He's always he walks guys unnecessarily. He doesn't really have control of his breaking balls anymore, and it shows because you can see him cursing up a storm during games and stuff like that. So if that comes into play, then the Rockies have a chance. But if Lester's on, they're going to be in trouble.
I agree. I think the Cubs will win tonight just because they're at home. Regardless if who I think is an actual better team, I'll just take them not having to travel Both teams did lose yesterday, but one team got to go home and sleep in their own bed and not travel all the way to Chicago for a one-game, one-off playoff situation. So I got the Cubs, but we'll see what happens.
Maybe they brought like a Tempur-Pedic bed topper for their hotel rooms so they can sleep on something comfortable, not a hotel bed. Or they went all out and bought. Well, it's the Rockies. They could have gotten a nice hotel room.
Yeah, and then we're looking at tomorrow, A's and Yankees. So Oakland.
That's gonna be fun to watch.
Yeah, Oakland's traveling, but of course they've had a few days. They've known their opponent for a while now, so that's going to be a big game too. I'm a little disappointed they're both not today. I wish there's 2 games on today, but I understand the scheduling.
I'm pretty sure it's on the same network. It's both on ESPN, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, one's on TBS, excuse me. One's on Today's ESPN, tomorrow is TBS.
Right. And
but
tomorrow's game will be at 8 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Pacific time on TBS. And what do you see in that game? That's going to be... I don't know if the probables have been released yet, but it should be an offensive game, in my opinion, just because both teams can really hit the ball.
With the way Stanton's been playing and the way with Chris Davis has been playing, with having a career year for the A's, potential AL MVP, who knows? He's definitely in the running for it. Chris Davis, that is. I would definitely put this game up there in a... It's an offensive matchup for sure.
Gotcha. So who do you think will win? Or are you waiting to see who the pitchers will be?
It's so tough because
without seeing the pitchers now, which way would you lean?
Because it's in New York, I might have to go with the Yankees, but I'm not gonna rule out the A's either. I think it's gonna be very close.
Yeah. High scoring, would you say?
Yeah, I would say about like a 7-6 game or an 8-9 game, something in that matter.
With a few home runs, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if the thing is, if Stanton's off, he's off. Like he can be a strikeout machine.
Yeah,
he could be Chris Davis, the Orioles player, not the other Chris Davis.
Yeah, I think the A's will win. I mean, I will. This is subject to change depending on who will pitch tomorrow, but when that's released, I might change my mind. But I just think going in, I don't know what it is. The Yankees might look more formidable. They might have the history. It might be in Yankee Stadium, but I just don't see the A's kind of cowering. I think that they've just been playing so well this year. Obviously, both teams will feel very, I don't know what's the word, but they'll be very disappointed if they don't actually enter the postseason and play a full series against somebody because they both had such great seasons.
Yeah, well, I've asked this question before, but do you think the wild card game should be a 2 out of 3, not just a 1-game series?
I mean, I don't really know because the wild card game was introduced, not too long ago. It was something that wasn't necessarily the best addition for the game of baseball, but it was for the fans, obviously. Like, who doesn't want to see a one-off win to get in situation between two teams? But it does, it's not a football.
It's not football where one game really decides a lot because they only play 17 weeks. This is 162 games, and it's all now down to one game, or 163 for some, but it's now down to one final game. It almost doesn't seem quite fair.
I don't think that the wild card game. Yeah, I mean, you asked me if it should be a 2 out of 3, but the wild card game in general is not fair, quote unquote, if we're even talking about it, because the 4th place team, the wild card team, used to always just make the postseason. They didn't have to win one more game, and there's some times where
they had to play the 1 seed, the best record in that.
But in a real series, they got to actually play.
In a 5-game series.
Exactly.
Granted. That's why I was thinking maybe they should have a 3-game series. Just, I understand scheduling is also a problem, but maybe put maybe they're just cramming it in because they don't have much room left. Because eventually, if they put a 3-game series, they might have to move the postseason into November also.
We already saw 163 games, I guess I should say.
I don't remember the last time there was 163 games.
It cracks me up because you play 162 games and you can't determine. You need one more game to figure it out.
You still can't decide.
I mean, head-to-head records or run differential don't matter, which I feel like that.
I feel like head-to-head matchups, maybe not run differential, because I feel like it's kind of unfair, because just based off like scheduling and stuff.
Because but you're basically playing the same. I mean, I get it. You're right. If you're playing against. If it's your team and a team from a different division, I get it. You don't play the exact same schedule. Maybe you play a tougher
If you
division.
have played each other in the regular, which you most likely have, then I would definitely put that into consideration.
Everybody in the same league will play each other. So, like if it's, let's just say the Dodgers.
I think it's baseball's reason to get an extra playoff game in there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a total ratings grab. It's fun. Let's be honest. If your team's in it, you're not necessarily happy because you're happy if you're the fifth place team. But if you
the team that barely got in, yeah,
you'll take that all day. But if you're the fourth, and what if your team finishes in the fourth?
So like
spot?
the Yankees,
right? But at least
if it wasn't,
but the A's are right there. Let's talk about a situation where it's not so close. Like you could finish as the fourth team and a 10 games better than the fifth team, and then the fifth team just has to beat you in a one-off. Mm-hmm. That seems kind of ridiculous.
Well, what are we going to do?
I mean, we're at least this year it's a good...
Bud Selig is still a commissioner, isn't he? Or is it someone new?
Bud Selig?
Yeah. Is it still him?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I had a feeling that wasn't him. That's why I was like, this doesn't sound like a Bud Selig type of thing. But if it was, like, this guy is becoming a corroded old man.
Yeah, Rob Manfred is the commissioner.
Okay, that's what that's what I was just like. I tried to make a Bud Selig joke in there, and I just did not work out.
I like Bud Selig. I miss that guy.
He's a tiny, tiny man. Have you ever seen him like go give people awards, and he's just like to their hip?
No,
you haven't seen that?
I mean, I know. I don't know if I've noticed it like you have.
Oh, when I saw him delivering one of the MVP trophies to Madison Bumgarner, and he went to his like stomach. Like it was Bumgarner's a tall dude, no doubt about it, but it just seemed almost like, wow, this guy is shrinking before our eyes.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know why we're talking about Selig. Let's just. But so you have all right. So do you have the A's or the Yankees in this?
I have the A's. I have the A's winning. I have the Cubs winning. So one.
Do you see another Chris Davis walk off like we've seen in like 100 of these games the A's have played?
Well, the A's can't walk off, right? Because they're not the home team. But
I got technically you can see like a game-winning hit by Chris Davis.
I think Chris Davis...
a go-ahead run by
I don't know if Chris Davis will actually be a huge factor, to be honest.
Really? He's their best player, I think.
He is, and he's had an amazing season. I mean, you said it yourself. He's a candidate for MVP, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I feel like in baseball, individual outfield players don't really make the biggest marks on these games. So there are exceptions, of course. A guy's a multi-homer game or something like that. But
okay, since we're talking about MVP candidates, do you see a Chris Davis MVP or do you see like a JD Martinez winning the AL MVP?
Yeah, I'll go with him because what the Red Sox have done is historic.
Yeah. Do you put any Yankees in there or no?
No, I think it's
JD Martinez.
I think it's his. I think it's in the bag.
Yeah. Well, again, we'll see. I wouldn't count out Chris Davis yet because of how well his season has been.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you have the Cubs. You said against the Rockies.
Yeah, I have the Cubs. I'll take John Lester and his experience.
Who do you have for NL MVP? Since we just talked about the AL MVP.
I don't know.
This one's kind of closer. Gosh, there's not really one standout in the National League, in my opinion. Just everyone's... Well, just because of how well the American League did compared to the National League, just based off records alone, you can tell the American League was the better league this season, and when a guy leads that league, he's probably the best player in the league. So... JD Martinez and Chris Davis arguably probably the best two seasons in the league this year.
Yeah, right now in the American League, the betting line, Mookie Betts looks like he's actually the favorite, and JD Martinez is slightly behind him.
Really?
And then you have a guy like Lindor, Jose Ramirez, and Mike Trout, who are also in the conversation.
I still think like Chris Davis and JD Martinez are going to be the two, but I see Betts also. But I think JD Martinez had a better year than Betts did.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what I kind of feel like it's.
How does MVP work? It's voting, isn't it?
Right, and I kind of feel like it's pick your flavor. I mean, Mookie Betts had a 346 average. He hit 32 home runs. Martinez over here hit 330 with 43 dingers and 130 runs batted in. So, I mean, they both play on the best team.
Isn't the RBI record like 160 something RBIs in a season? So he almost broke that.
That sounds about right. And then in the National League, it looks like Christian Yelich is the odds-on favorite, and I actually would agree with that. And Milwaukee just took home a playoff berth. So
I don't. There's not really a fire starter in Milwaukee. Excuse me, the National League.
Yeah, Baez is another one who's up there, and Arenado is another one. But it looks like it's in the bag for Yelich.
All right. Well, we're going to take another short break. When we get back to you, we'll be talking about the divisional series matchups that have been set, such as the Braves and the Dodgers for one, for example. But we'll get on that when we get back to you.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We've talked about the Monday Night Football matchup between the Chiefs and Broncos. We've talked about the wild card matchups as well as Game 163 in the MLB. Now we're going to be talking about the divisional series matchups that are official at the moment, such as the Braves and the Dodgers, as well as the Indians and Astros. We'll start with the American League. Indians versus Astros. Who do you like in this matchup?
I like Houston. I'll go with them as the defending champs. I don't know if they'll win the World Series again this year, but I do like them in this matchup. Give me the Astros.
I'm gonna have to go Indians, just because I feel like they're more. They have way more to prove than any other team in the playoffs, in my opinion. Just because they've been so close for so long that it's almost like it's due. It's long overdue, but with them losing to the Cubs in 7 in the World Series of 2016 and coming so close last year after winning like 23 games in a row, multiple times, I think it was too. This team just needs to prove that it belongs and it should be a World Series champion. I think they're more motivated than any other. There's more motivation for them, I think, than any other team.
Yeah, and as of right now, Game 1. Stands Kluber is pitching for Cleveland. Houston hasn't released their probables yet, so we will see who is the actual matchup, but the Astros will start the series at home. That's just what I got. I think it will be a good series, though. I think, like you mentioned,
I could see 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, I think definitely it won't be a sweep or anything like that. I'm thinking.
No, these teams are pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, I would say it goes to. I'll say it goes to 4.
4, okay.
Yeah.
I can agree with that, but I can also see it going to 5.
Absolutely.
But who do you see as a factor in this game? Who do you think is going to be the X factor on either team?
For me, I think Altuve.
Altuve, yeah, I agree
what
with
he
that.
does, I mean, as a kid growing up, I played baseball, and guys like Jose Altuve were players who I liked, right? Like I was a shorter guy. He's a shorter player.
I am shorter than you, so you can't say anything.
Yeah, but when I was a kid, I was really small, and I played second base, shortstop, middle infield because I was small. I had good defensive skills. I could run a little bit. I could make contact.
They did put the taller guys in the outfield because they could reach over the fence.
Yeah, and they could smack the ball away. I always batted near the top of the lineup. So a guy like Altuve, he's just kind of a throwback player for me. I love the way he plays. I think that not only is he a great player on the field, but he is a leader of that team, and I think they really rally behind him.
I agree with that. Just because on the fact that Altuve is their guy. He's like the man on that team. So I would definitely put that. But I'm not. I feel like this team. This is the most evenly matched series of this year so far.
Yeah, I like both teams up and down. You look at the lineups, you look at the pitching staffs. Like you're right. This is a very solid matchup, and it's tough to figure out. I wouldn't be shocked if the Indians won. I just think that with the Astros' experience, postseason success, I think that might make a difference maybe in the crucial moments.
Well, whoever's going to win this game is definitely going to be a threat in the CS.
Yeah. It's crazy how the Red Sox have this amazing season, but it looks like they're going to have to go through
the American
Pantheon.
League is just stacked. The American League is just stacked beyond belief.
I mean, can you imagine if you're the Red Sox and you have this season, but then you still have to face like the Yankees and then Houston? Or I mean, that's crazy.
Well, I mean, you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, and they will have to beat the best, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you still see the Red Sox making it to the World Series through all this?
Yeah, I said that yesterday. I'm going to stick by that. I just think that they are such a deadly team that...
Well, over 100 wins really speaks for itself.
I mean...
They were close to breaking the record. The record for most wins in the season is 111.
Yeah.
So... And the last team to do that was the Seattle Mariners, 2001.
And you can't
they didn't even make the World Series. They made it to the ALCS and lost to the eventual participants, the Yankees.
And when you put up wins like that in that division, I mean, you could say that they might have won 120 games in a different division.
Not if they weren't in the AL East, you're saying?
Yeah, because of the...
If they were in the AL Central, yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, we're talking about... You mentioned it yesterday, the Blue Jays, right?
Mm-hmm. What about them? What did I say?
No, I'm sorry, the Devil Rays.
Oh, how good they were! And
yeah, how good they were.
I was like, wait a minute, I talked about the Blue Jays.
Yeah, definitely wrong team. But you talked about how
a couple years ago was not the wrong team.
You said they were the wrong team at the wrong time to have this.
Right team at the wrong time.
Excuse me. So,
or you could say right team, wrong division.
Right. So, if you plucked them and put them in the National League or a different division in the American League,
they'd take the AL East for sure.
Yeah. So. I mean,
and an easier schedule than they don't have to play the Yankees and Red Sox as much.
Yeah, so my point being is that the Red Sox not only had an amazing season, but I mean, when you look at the division that they did it in, that is even more impressive for me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely like, if the Rays made the playoffs, I would put them as a major threat in this postseason. Like, people are like, oh, if you don't make the playoffs, you're not very good. That's not the case for the Rays at all. They just are in the wrong division.
Yeah.
It's really not fair.
It's one of those things where the American League is so stacked that a team that didn't make the playoffs in the American League might be the favorite in the National League.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. Just because of the fact that the AL East is the strongest division in the league by far.
Yeah. No question.
And just how good the Red Sox did, over 100 wins within that tough division, really proved how good they really are. But again, they are still going to be tested pretty hard going into their divisional round, let alone if they make it to the CS. But I still think an American League team is probably going to win the World Series.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say the Red Sox are the favorite, or are you taking? You said the Indians, right?
Yeah.
You like the Indians.
Well, just because I feel like they're a team on a mission.
You think that they're due?
Yeah, but also that I think they're they have more motivation than anyone else.
Yeah, they've had some heartbreak, right?
Yeah, I think they're destined to break that out. If the Cubs can, the Indians should. And then with LeBron leaving Cleveland, that city has nothing but the Indians.
What do you mean? They have Baker Mayfield.
It's the Browns, man.
Yeah, but Baker just gives them a new hope, a new outlook on life.
Okay, only hope for a championship is the Indians. How's that? Is that better?
That sounds better.
I don't see Baker Mayfield. No offense to anyone in Cleveland, but I don't see Baker Mayfield holding a Lombardi trophy at the end of this season.
Not this year, at least.
Do you see them winning? Okay, well, I have to ask this. Do you see them winning a Super Bowl in the next, 5 years?
No, because somehow Hugh Jackson will still be the coach.
If he should have got fired last year. I mean, you go 0-16, you should lose your job.
You should have ended that sentence that he should have got fired.
I'm sorry, 0-16, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Bill Walsh, you should lose your job. 0-16? You can't get one win in the NFL?
Yeah, I think we talked about this yesterday, but I think it's harder to lose that many games than actually accidentally run into one, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You got to be that statistically bad for 16 weeks?
It's not just the players, let's put it that way.
Absolutely not. It's Hugh Jackson. You got to look at leadership. Hugh Jackson does not have leadership.
So you asked me if the Browns would win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. They'd have to fire Hugh
If Hugh Jackson's not the coach, maybe. But moving back to Cleveland Indians, this is their chance to hold a championship for that city outside of LeBron James.
Yeah, they kind of remind me how the Royals were a few years ago, how they got so close and then they finally got over the hump.
Well,
I kind of feel like they
lost to the Giants in 2014 and
Right.
then went back next year and faced the Mets. So it was almost like they were destined to win that one.
Yeah, I could see something like that for the Indians. I'm actually rooting for them to do well.
They're the lovable loser like the Browns are. The Cleveland is just the lovable loser teams.
Yeah,
there.
and Major League is
All
such
due
a
respect.
good movie.
Oh, I love that movie.
I
love both those movies. I even like the third one when they go to the minor leagues with the Buzz. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah, and that's a movie that has stood the test of time. One of the best sports movies that there is.
Oh, I love that movie. And the first one's great because they don't say they're winning the World Series. They just went to the playoffs. That was the end of the movie. And then the next one was they go to the World Series. They didn't say nothing about them winning.
Yeah, they just made it. They were just happy to be there.
Yeah, which was awesome. That's all you needed. Just the thought of they could win. Because, if you have them win the World Series, in Rookie of the Year, they won the World Series. So it was just really? I mean, that's...
No, they didn't win the World Series in Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, they did.
They said they did
at the end because he held the World Series ring.
Right.
So yes, they did win without Rowan Gardner.
You're right. They just ended the actual visual part of the movie with them beating the Mets for the pennant
because he lost his shoulder.
Yeah, and he threw the
floater,
yeah,
which
the
should
floater.
which is why would you swing at that? That's a ball. But whatever.
I loved that guy in that movie. The meathead.
I don't even remember his name.
Mets
Potato
guy.
or something like that.
I don't know. I can't recall.
Potato?
That was such a good movie.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna take another short break. When we get back, we'll talk about anything else that relates to sports in this week, and we'll get right back on that when we get back to you once again.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We've talked about Monday Night Football. We've talked about the MLB postseason. Now let's talk about the new NBA preseason that has been happening recently. We saw the first picks in the draft, number 1 and 2, Bagley the third, as well as DeAndre Ayton play each other between the Suns and the Kings. The Kings won the game, but DeAndre Ayton had 24 points and 10 rebounds. What did you think of this game? What were the stats for Bagley there? You have them right there. I see them.
Yeah, so Bagley, definitely not as impressive as DeAndre Ayton, who had a very good game. Let me pull it up here. So 7 points, 2 assists, and 2 rebounds for Bagley on 2 of 7 shooting in 25 minutes. So 25 minutes, 7 points, 2 boards, 2 assists, 2 of 7 from the field.
So do you think people are arguing that the Kings picked the wrong player? Do you agree with that?
I hope for the best for Marvin Bagley. I just don't think the Kings made the right decision at the draft. I was a big Luka Doncic guy myself. I thought he would have fit in really nicely with the team and kind of extending that Eastern European connection that the Kings and the Kings fans have grown to know and love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Kings have been known for picking the wrong guys. For how long have they been around in the league?
They've been in the league since they moved to Sacramento in 85.
1985. So since 1985, they picked the wrong guy. It feels like. And we're based off in Northern California, so we have been around the reaction of Kings fans when the draft comes every year, and there's so much promise in Kings fans' minds, and they're always thrown a disappointment. So, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel for these Kings fans?
There are players on the team, young players that look to have good futures in the NBA. But with the Kings, you have to start at the top. And, since ownership changed a few years back and they hired Vlade Divac to be their general manager, they've just been uneven in terms of the moves they've made. They've made a couple good moves. They made a disastrous move, actually, to free up cap space, which takes away their first-round draft pick this year. That might haunt them because that could definitely be a top 3, top 5 pick. What do you think?
Yeah, but overall, who do you see as the rookie of the year for this year? I think we should go into the overall rookies in the NBA, not just the Sacramento Kings. But who do you see as the front runner for MVP? Do you see DeAndre Ayton taking that MVP spot?
I could see him doing it for sure. He's the number 1 pick. He has the most hype. The problem is he might be on a really bad team, so who knows? A lot of times people take that into account, right? Like team success. Like, is he a good player on a bad team? Okay, but what about this good player, this good rookie on a better team, a possible playoff team? A guy like Kevin Knox, for example, for the New York Knicks, not one of the highest touted players, but over Summer League and in preseason, there's a lot of hype about him. And maybe the Knicks make the playoffs. I mean, the East is so wide open that a team could string together a couple decent players, especially young players, and then, mess around and make the playoffs. You can't do that really in the West. Yeah,
true. But in the NBA draft, those guys have to contribute almost immediately compared to other drafts in sports. So there's a lot of pressure going on these guys. DeAndre Ayton is a big dude with great talent, no doubt about it. He could definitely win that MVP or the Rookie of the Year award, But there are still a lot of other options for Rookie of the Year. But I would still say, in my opinion, that DeAndre Ayton, he's 24 points and 10 rebounds in his first game. That's pretty good. And I don't see any other weapons on that Phoenix Suns team that he can use to benefit himself. So he might be their only weapon they got.
What about Devin Booker?
No, still DeAndre Ayton's a better player.
He's a great shooter, though.
Yeah, but DeAndre Ayton is an overall better player.
I mean, Devin Booker is a very good player, so I see them actually being a nice little 1-2 combo with Booker shooting from the outside. But I think you're right in terms of Ayton being the front runner for Rookie of the Year because he's just going to put up big numbers. Like, he's going to, what do we expect from him? Like 18, 19 points and like 12, 13 rebounds at minimum, would you say?
Yeah, definitely double-double.
Yeah. So if he averages a double-double, I mean, and his points are hovering around 20, that's pretty good. That's going to be hard to beat for another rookie in a different situation.
Yeah, I would definitely think so. DeAndre Ayton is a very touted player out of Arizona, and he's going to have a lot to live up to this season. That's for sure.
What do you make of Trae Young? There was a lot of draft pundits, college basketball analysts. They were kind of mixed on him. Some saw him as the next Steph Curry, and some saw him as just a guy that can, be a shooter off the bench.
I think it's unfair to call him the next Steph Curry. It's like calling someone the next Michael Jordan or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just it's hype that you should not put on someone so early in their career, and it's really hard to live up to that at all.
Oh, absolutely. The hype, for him is actually more unfair than the hype against him, in my opinion. Just because, you're not comparing him to just like a good NBA point guard. You're comparing him to Steph Curry, which is
two-time
ridiculous.
NBA MVP.
Yeah. So Trae Young, he saw some action last night. He had 11 points, 8 assists, which is nice, and 2 rebounds. He was 5 of 16 from the field, only 1 of 6 from beyond the arc. What do you make of his season coming up? The Hawks are obviously not very good. He's probably going to start, I would assume. What do you think? Do you see a positive year for him, or do you think he'll struggle?
Tell me when the regular season begins.
Okay.
I want to see how he does in the preseason first.
A lot of people call him the next Steph Curry or compare him, right? Because they're similar build. They're both smaller, slight players who can shoot.
It took Steph Curry a couple of years to get to that form, though.
It did. So do you think that the NBA game will kind of test his physical ability? Maybe he'll need to take a couple of years to grow and actually develop.
I give him a couple of years.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's going to get roughed up a little bit. What do you think?
Definitely going to. I think just the team he went on, he's definitely going to struggle.
Yeah. What about Kevin Knox? 13 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists last night in 26 minutes for the New York Knicks as they defeated Washington. Again, 13 points, 10 boards, 3 assists, 4 of 9 shooting, 2 of 5 from the outside in 26 minutes. I think he's got an outside shot of Rookie of the Year, even though he's not as touted as a guy like Ayton. Obviously Luka Doncic. What do you think? What are your expectations for him? There's been a lot of hype.
I'm definitely, again, it's so hard to tell because it's just literally only a few games in the preseason have happened.
I'll tell you what advantages he does have, though. He's playing on a team that could possibly make the playoffs just by being a semi-competent team, whereas Ayton can't. But he also plays in New York. So if he makes the Knicks good, or if they're at least a lot more improved than what they were previously, I think that being in that media market will help his case, whereas Ayton will play for the Suns. They won't play very many important games on national television, and they play a lot of games where people are asleep.
If they do play on national television, it's because of Ayton alone. Because if you get the first overall pick, you're going to get a couple national televised games. Just see what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. It could happen, but
his first game is probably going to be national televised.
The Suns, they might have... Without looking at the schedule, they might have a couple games on national TV, but they're not a draw.
No, of course not.
The Knicks are always going to be on TV, even when they've been terrible for how long now? They've been irrelevant in the NBA for a long time, but
20 years?
Still get games on Christmas or Thanksgiving and all that, right?
Well, they did have Carmelo for a good portion of that time. I think that's one of the reasons they got national television also. But overall, I think it's just higher markets get more looked at compared to others. When you look at the NBA making those sleeve jerseys, you see the guys with sleeve jerseys being the main teams, the draw teams, and the other teams don't get those.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else that comes to your mind? Anything else you want to talk about?
Not really. For the NBA, since we just got the preseason underway, I'm just focused on kind of these rookies now. I think we covered most of the ones that played in the last couple of days, so I'm all good over here.
All right, I guess we'll call it for that for today. Join us tomorrow. We'll have a couple more I believe there's more preseason games on today, correct?
Yes.
So we'll
tonight we have Heat and Hornets, Cavs and Celtics, Grizzlies, Rockets, Raptors, Jazz, and Nuggets against the LeBron-led Lakers.
Okay, so LA LeBrons and the Nuggets, you say?
And the LeBrons can be seen on TNT, so...
Well, that'll be all the time we have for today. Join us tomorrow where we have the wild card game, one wild card game down, one to go, and we'll get all on that when we get back to you tomorrow.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.